I'm now reading about Obama pushes back against critics of Iran deal. Pushing back hard, President Barack Obama forcefully defended the temporary agreement to freeze Iran's disputed nuclear program on Monday, declaring that the United States cannot close the door on diplomacy. The president's remarks followed skepticism of the historic record expressed by some U.S. allies abroad as well as by members of Congress at home, including fellow Democrats. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, one of the fiercest opponents of the 6-month deal, called it a historic mistake, and announced he would be dispatching a top envoy to Washington to try to toughen the final agreement. Negotiators will soon begin hammering out. Obama, without naming names, swept at those who have questioned the wisdom of engaging with Iran. Tough talk and bluster may be the easy thing to do politically, but it is not the right thing to do for our security, he said during an event in San Francisco. The weekend agreement between Iran and six world powers, the U.S., Britain, France, Russia, China, and Germany, is to temporarily halt parts of Tehran's disputed nuclear program and allow for more intrusive international monitoring. In exchange, Iran gains some modest relief from stiff economic sanctions and a pledge from Obama that no new penalties will be levied during the 6 months. Despite the fanfare surrounding the agreement, administration officials said key technical details on the inspections and sanctions relief must still be worked out before it formally takes effect. Those talks will tackle the toughest issues that have long divided Iran and the West, including whether Tehran will be allowed to enrich uranium at a low level. Iran insists it has a right to enrich uranium for peaceful purpose, and many nuclear analysts say a final deal will almost certainly leave Iran with some right to enrich. However, that's sure to spark more discord with Israel and many lawmakers who insist Tehran be stripped of all enrichment capabilities. British Foreign Secretary William Hodge said he expects the deal to be fully implemented by the end of January. European Union officials said their sanctions could be eased as soon as December, Those restrictions, after numerous areas including trade in petrochemicals, gold, and other precious metals, financial transfers to purchase food and medicine, and the ability of third countries to use EU-based firms to ensure shipment of Iranian oil again. The groundwork for the accord was laid during 4 clandestine meetings between U.S. and Iranian office officials throughout the summer and fall. An earlier meeting took place in March before Iranians elected President Hassan Rouhani, a cleric who has taken more moderate public stances than his predecessor. Details of the secret talks were confirmed to the Associated Press by 3 senior administration officials. The U.S. and its allies contend Iran is seeking to produce a nuclear bomb, a particular concern to Israel, which fires an attack, while Tehran insists it is merely pursuing a peaceful nuclear program for energy and medical purposes. Even with the criticism for Obama, the sudden shift to foreign policy presents an opportunity to steady his flailing second term and take some attention of the domestic troubles that have plagued the White House in recent weeks, especially the rollout of his signature health care law. Perhaps with his presidential standing and the strength of the rest of his term, he made sure on Monday to draw a connection between the nuclear pact and his long-declared willingness to negotiate directly with Iran. When I first ran for president, I said it was time for a new era of American leadership in the world. When I turned the page on a decade of war and began a new era of engagement with the world, he said, as president and as commander-in-chief, I've done what I've said. Later, at a high-dollar fundraiser in Los Angeles, Obama said he will not take any opinions off the table to ensure Iran does not develop a nuclear weapon. However, he added, I have spent too much time at Wall Street looking at kids 22, 23, and 24, 25 years old who have paid the kind of price that very few of us in this room can imagine on behalf of our freedom, not to say that I will do every single thing that I can to try to resolve these issues without resorting to military conflict. The temporary accord is historic in its own right, marking the most substantial agreement between Iran and the West in more than 3 decades. The consequences of a permanent deal could be far more significant, lowering the prospect of a nuclear arms race in a volatile Middle East, and perhaps opening the door to wider relations between the U.S. and Iran, which broke off diplomatic ties following the 1997 1979 Islamic Revolution. However, Obama and his advisors know the nuclear negotiations are rife with risk. If he has miscalculated Iran's intentions, it will vindicate critics who say his willingness to negotiate with Tehran is naive and could inadvertently hasten the Islamic Republic's march toward a nuclear weapon. Obama also runs the risk of exacerbating tensions with key Middle Eastern allies, as well as members of Congress who want to deepen, not ease, economic penalties on Iran. Despite Obama's assurances that no new sanctions will be levied on Iran while the interim agreement is in effect, some lawmakers want to push ahead with additional penalties. A new sanctions bill has already passed the House, and if it passes the Senate, Obama could have to wield his veto power in order to keep his promise to Tehran. Even some members of Obama's own party say they are wary of the deal struck in Geneva. I am disappointed by the terms of the agreement between Iran and the P5+1 nations because it does not seem proportional, said Sam Chuck Schumer, DNY, a close ally of the White House. Iran simply freezes its nuclear capabilities while we reduce the sanctions. The Senate's Democratic Majority Leader, Harry Reid, was non-committal on the subject of sanctions on Monday. On NPR's The Ram Show, he said that when lawmakers return from their Thanksgiving break, we will take a look at this to see if we need strong sanctions, and if we need work on this. If we need stronger sanctions, I'm sure we will do that. Some lawmakers are also concerned about concession the world powers made to Iran on its planned heavy water reactor in Arak, southwest of Tehran. Two congressional aides said that under the terms of the agreement, international monitors will not be able to watch live feeds of any activity at Arak and will instead retrieve a recording from the preceding day during each daily inspection. The aides were not authorized to provide details of the agreement and demanded anonymity. On the positive side, Michael Deschy, a political science professor at the University of Notre Dame, compared Obama's diplomatic overtures to Secretary of State Henry Kissinger's secret outreach to China in the 1970s, which paved the way for the historic opening of U.S. relations with the Asia nation. Then, as now, critics complained that the U.S. was in danger of being hoodwinked by the radical and violent regime that was playing us for a sucker. That said, an opening to Iran could potentially not only contain its nuclear program but set the stage for broader changes there as well. Associated Press writer Jim Cohen in San Francisco and Bradley Clapper in Washington contributed to this report. I'm now reading about NBA star James in talks with Beckham on Miami MLS bid. NBA superstar LeBron James confirmed Monday that he is in talks with England football icon David Beckham about investing in a possible Major League Soccer expansion club for Miami. James, who has led the Miami Heat to the past 2 NBA titles, told the Miami Herald that he has spoken with Beckham about the project. James owns a small share of English Premier League side Liverpool. There is some interest on both sides, James said. David has become a good friend of mine over the last few years, and I think it would be great for this city to have a football club. There is interest on both sides, but it's preliminary talks, but there is some open dialogue. Beckham, who recently retired as a player, has been exploring the possibility of owning a MLS club, the chance to grab a team for a discounted rate was reportedly part of the contract that lured the former Manchester United star midfielder to the MLS Los Angeles Galaxy in 2007 from Real Madrid. A time to make a deal for a team is said to be running out, possibly by the end of the year. The MLS had a Miami team, the Fusion, from 1998 through 2001. Before it folded, and James said the level of support from the Miami market is still being explored. We don't know the potential, James said. The research is still being made out, but I think it could be huge. You never know. I think this is a great town for soccer. There are a lot of soccer players here. There is a great youth organization of soccer here, and people love the city as well. So that definitely will help. So that definitely will help. Beckham has become a familiar face that Heat games, and James has enjoyed a growing interest in football, even hyping his connections to the sport via video games in an advertisement, since his role in Fenway Sports Group gave him a piece of Liverpool. I have grown a great interest in watching the game and learning it, and it is a pretty intense sport, James said, and my kids love it as well. But I have grown to a point where I know exactly what's going on when I'm watching the game. James has spent time touring Liverpool facilities and meeting players. Stephen Rose, owner of the NFL Miami Dolphins, has reportedly shown interest in partnering with Beckham as well. A crowd of 71,124, the largest ever for a football match in Florida, attended a Brazil 5-0 friendly win over Honduras last Saturday. But James says Miami actually obtaining an MLS club is far from a done deal despite the superstar leverage behind the project. We don't know, James said. It's like buying a house. You don't know until you sign the papers. I'm now reading about Afghan elders to discuss key security deal with the U.S. Thousands of tribal chieftains and politicians will gather this week in the Afghan capital to discuss a security pact with the United States, which will shape Washington's future military presence in the war-scarred nation. The Bilateral Security Agreement (BSA) will determine how many U.S. soldiers stay in Afghanistan when most of NATO's troops deployed in the country since 2001. Currently numbering 75,000 live at the end of 2014. Key obstacles include the question of legal immunity for those U.S. troops who remain, an issue that's scuppered a similar pact in Iraq, and the Taliban have branded the meeting a U.S.-designed plot, vowing to pursue and punish its delegates as traitors if they approve the BSA, highlighting the security challenges facing Afghanistan. A Taliban suicide bombing near the venue on Saturday killed a dozen people, most of them civilians. Providing details for the first time since tough year-long negotiations between U.S. and Afghan officials. Kabul says up to 16,000 American troops could stay beyond 2014. If signed, Bagram Air Base, the largest military base in the country, will remain under U.S. control, according to President Hamid Karzai's National Security Advisor, Rangin Dadfar Spanta. Bagram, located about 50 kilometers north of Kabul is the main airbase for the U.S.-led NATO force, housing about 40,000 troops. American forces will also be allowed to share other locations, mostly military airfields, with local security forces across the country, including Shindand in Herat province on the Iranian border, according to Spanta. We believe that concluding the BSA will send an important signal of clarity about the future of our relationship with Afghanistan and what the future of Afghanistan can look like. U.S. Ambassador to Kabul James Cunningham said recently. Loya Jirga Pashto for Grand Assembly will also decide whether U.S. soldiers should be given immunity against Afghan laws for crimes they commit while deployed in Afghanistan. The subject has been a serious sticking point. Karzai has said the Loya Jirga is the only Afghan institution with the authority to decide whether or not to grant immunity to the U.S. soldiers. The issue of U.S. troop immunity sank a similar deal in Iraq in 2011, leading Americans to pull out completely. The country is now in the grip of some of its worst sectarian violence since 2008. A similar so-called zero option has been touted as a possibility in Afghanistan, leading to fears of a return to the chaotic violence of the 1990s, when rival warlords laid waste to Kabul. But President Barack Obama's special envoy for Afghanistan and Pakistan, James Dobbins, rejected the Iraq comparison, saying the BSA would be supported by Afghans. They want us, they need us, and we promise to stay, he said. So in the case of Afghanistan, across the political spectrum, and in polling and any other source of information on Afghan attitudes, there is strong support for continued international military and civilian presence. Afghan Finance Minister Omar Zakhiwal, speaking in New Delhi on Monday, gave a similarly bullish assessment of his country's security forces, saying doomsday predictions of a repeat of the 1990s were unfounded. The 4-day Loya Jirga will start on Thursday at the campus of Polytechnic University in West Kabul. Thousands of security forces and intelligence agents have been deployed in and around the capital to protect the gathering against the Taliban threats. Taliban threat. Kate Clark, a senior analyst with the Kabul-based Afghanistan Analyst Network, said too much was at stake for Jirga to reject the BSA. On the BSA depends not just U.S. bases, and a possible counter-terrorism force, but also the continuing NATO training mission and money for the